Hello, class. Today we're going to be talking about the religion of Islam. So, our lesson question is: how did the Islamic faith unify the Arabian Peninsula? And the Arabian Peninsula is where Islam began. So, our lesson objectives are to describe the characteristics of the Arab world before Muhammad. Now, Arabic is the language that Islam was written in, and it was the language spoken in the Arabian Peninsula. Explain the founding of Islam under Muhammad. So, a man named Muhammad founded the religion of Islam. And to identify the beliefs of Islam. So, we're going to get a little bit better idea of what Islam is and what it's like. So, first, let's start off with vocabulary. Your first word is submission, and that's basically the act of being obedient or accepting authority. Bedouins are members of Arab tribal groups. They kind of live in the desert and they move from place to place. The Hajj is the journey to Mecca that each Muslim must take once in their life. It's part of their religion. Arabic is the language of Islam. Alms is giving to the poor or those that are in need. Mecca is the holy city of Islam. And Muslims actually face the direction of Mecca when they pray. Nomadic, that's moving from one place to another and not having a permanent home. The Bedouins were actually nomadic. Prophet, a prophet is a religious figure who's come to deliver a message from God. The Quran is the holy book of Islam. It's kind of like how the Christians have the Bible, Muslims have the Quran. And monotheism is the belief in one God. Mono for one, and theism is the belief in gods. Timeline of world religions. So we're going to look at various religions and when they began. So Judaism began in the Middle East in 1800 BCE. And Hinduism began in India. Buddhism in 550 BCE, that also began in India. And then in 30 CE, that's the Common Era, Christianity began in the Middle East. And then in 610 CE is when Muhammad founded Islam, also in the Middle East. So here you can see it on that timeline. You can see Judaism there was the first major religion, followed by Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and then finally Islam. Now, the Arabian Peninsula is covered by desert. So that basically it limits agriculture. It's harder to grow things there. But it's centrally located, and that led to lots of trade. So trade from the Persian Empire into Africa, trade from the Byzantine Empire to the east, trade from the Silk Road would move through Arabia. So many groups in the Arabian Peninsula facilitated trade. The Bedouins were one of those groups. They were a nomadic people, meaning that they moved from place to place with no permanent settlement. They moved between places that had water and then grazing lands. And they lived in family groups called clans. And those clans sometimes would even fight against each other for rights over water and grazing lands. Trade cities began to grow in the 600s. Mecca and Medina were two of the most important trade cities in the Arabian Peninsula. The Silk Road from China was part of the reason why this trade was going through the Arabian Peninsula. Because if you remember, the Silk Road started in Asia and went through Central Asia, got to the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, and then moved into Europe and Africa from there. There were lots of luxury items traded on the Silk Road. Things like perfumes, ivory, silk, textiles, grain, metals. But goods weren't the only thing traded. Cultural exchanges also occurred. So you can see here, from the Silk Roads, land trade routes went through Persia and into the Arabian Peninsula. And you can see how the Arabian Peninsula is kind of crisscrossed with these different trade routes. And also, around the Arabian Peninsula, you have water trade routes. Now, Mecca, before the rise of Islam, was a city of diverse religious beliefs. It means lots of people had lots of different kinds of religions. Religious pilgrims, now pilgrim is somebody who travels to one place for a religious reason. So religious pilgrims of many faiths came to Mecca to worship. Arabs believed an ancient shrine called the Kaaba was constructed by Abraham and his son Ishmael. Now, Abraham is the founder of Judaism and is also important in Christianity and Islam. It's one of the three major monotheistic religions. Remember, monotheistic means one God. Now, other Arab people followed traditional beliefs and worshipped many gods, so they were not monotheistic. They were actually polytheistic. And this is a picture of the Kaaba, and all of these people going around the Kaaba there are pilgrims on the Hajj to Mecca. Now, Muhammad is the founder of Islam, and he lived from 570 to 632 CE. And he's believed to be the last messenger or the prophet of God. Now, he was a respected political, military, and religious leader. And he began his life as a trade merchant until, according to Muslim belief, he received a message from the angel Gabriel. The message that he received from God is often referred to as a revelation. So he received his first revelation from God in 610 CE. Those revelations that Muhammad received formed the basis of Islam. They were all written down in a book called the Quran. And Muhammad held that monotheistic belief in one God, which the Arabic word for God is Allah. Islam means submission to the will of Allah in Arabic, or submission to the will of God. Muhammad started to spread his message in Mecca. In 610 CE, Muhammad shared his revelations with friends and family, and he actually started preaching in public. And many people accepted his message and became Muslims. But certain city leaders of Mecca felt threatened by Muhammad's influence, so he ended up facing opposition in Mecca. So what did he do? He moved. He moved to the city of Medina, and when he was there, he kept preaching his teachings and attracted thousands of followers, and he became a political and religious leader of Medina. And then he returned to Mecca. In 630 CE, Muhammad returned to Mecca with an army of 10,000 soldiers. Mecca was forced to surrender. While he was there, he dedicated the Kaaba to Allah and made it an important Islamic site. And he was able to unify much of the Arabian Peninsula under Islam before his death in 632 CE. So it was only 2 years after returning to Mecca that he died, but he was able to unite a lot of the Arabian Peninsula in that time. Now, the Quran is the holy book of Islam. It was compiled by Muhammad's followers after his death, and it's written in Arabic. And now, the majority of people on the Arabian Peninsula spoke Arabic, so having a common religion with a common language helped unify the region. Part of the religion of Islam is to follow the 5 pillars of Islam. These are basically set beliefs that govern the practice of Islam. The first one is faith, and that is to proclaim that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his prophet. The second is prayer. Muslims must pray 5 times a day, facing the direction of Mecca. Alms is another pillar of Islam, and that's to give poor or needy. Fasting. And fasting is where you don't eat. And for Muslims, they don't eat during daylight hours during the month of Ramadan. So if the sun's up, they're not eating during Ramadan. And pilgrimage. And that's where you visit Mecca once during your lifetime on a journey called the Hajj. So these are all things that Muslims strive to achieve in their life. Now, Islamic law affects how Muslims live. Now, many Islamic countries follow what's known as Sharia law or Islamic law. Now, that's based on the Quran and other teachings. Now, Islamic law is all-encompassing, means it regulates every part of your life: business, community, family life, moral conduct, everything. And because of that, Islam impacts the daily life of Muslims in a variety of ways. One is the way that they dress. There's strict codes of dress for many Muslim women. That's why a lot of times you'll see Muslim women with their face completely covered. Diet. Many Muslims don't eat pork or drink alcohol. And then social interaction. There are different rules for how men and women interact with each other. For example, in some Muslim cultures, it is forbidden for women to be out in public without a male member of their family. Now, even though Islam might seem kind of different to a lot of us, there are some strong connections to Judaism and Christianity because all three of them are monotheistic religions from the Middle East. So let's start with the similarities. Abraham is viewed as a prophet of God in all three religions. Many of the same holy figures appear in all three of those religions. Allah is the same God that Christians and Jews worship. Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Both Christians and Muslims view Jesus as a prophet. Now, there's some differences. Muslims do not see Jesus as the Son of God, but they do believe that he's a prophet. Muslims often refer to Christians and Jews as people of the book because there are so many similarities. Now, let's look at this timeline to put this into perspective a little bit. In 565 CE, Justinian I died. That's from our last lesson with the Byzantine Empire. Just to put it into a little bit of historical context. From 570 to 632, that was the life of Muhammad. 610 CE, that's when Muhammad had his first revelation. 622 is when he moved to Medina, and 630 is when he conquered Mecca. So hopefully you have a little bit better understanding of Islam and what it means for Muslims when they practice their faith. Thanks.